to critical systems or sensitive information. And then as we know it, humans are the weakest link, and the statistics that I'm going to throw at you are going to show those. All right, based on extensive studies, aka Googling, I've come to the conclusion that 95% of all cybersecurity breaches are due to human error. In the year of 2018 alone, the average user received 16 malicious emails per month. I don't even know how they got that number because it seems pretty low. Either way, moving on, 92.4% of all malware is delivered via email. So let's face it, everyone uses it and everyone checks it, just like our text messaging. Last, the number one disguise is invoices. Hey, XYZ, here's your balance for your internet service. It's overdue. Pay this. And oh, did I mention you need to pay it now via this phony link or this malicious attachment? So now that we have the statistics out of the way, and we know that social engineering is a huge problem and that humans fall for many of those antics, let's go over some of the different types of social engineering. There are three basic types of social engineering that I like to go over. There's phishing, which is email, phone, or SMS based. There's pretexting, which we'll go into more detail later, but basically uses really fabricated scenarios. And then there's physical, which means exactly what it says. It's in person. So let's jump into more detail on each of those. First, we'll go into phishing. This is the most commonly used form of social engineering. These are those annoying emails that we get more times than we like to say, and it's usually saying, pay this, pay that, click on this, you won that. And while most of them are usually easy to identify just because of the ridiculousness of them, some of them are really thought out and well crafted. The end goal for them, as with all social engineering attacks, is to gain access to sensitive information or systems, like we mentioned earlier. What are the most common techniques? There is spear phishing, which is basically personalized phishing attacks that require the attacker to perform reconnaissance on the victim to gain information such as friends' names, parents, companies, anything like that, just so they can appear in the know. Then there's what we call whaling, and this isn't like hanging off the back of a boat throwing bait out and catching a fish. This is targeting of high-profile individuals such as CEOs, CFOs, anyone like that. That's the two major techniques, so let's check out the different delivery methods that are most commonly used. The first is email phishing. It is what it says. The second is Vishing or voice phishing. And the last is smishing, which is a really cool word, but it's SMS phishing. So let's jump into more detail on the different delivery types for phishing. First, and the most recognizable one, is email phishing. This is the most commonly used of the bunch because, simply put, emailing people is really simple. And then oftentimes, to make the email more believable, an attacker may purchase an email domain that's really close to the victims, but with some subtle differences, like an extra T or an extra I. And some of the emails may contain a malicious attachment, such as viruses or malware being disguised as an invoice or a bill or something like that. Then there's link manipulation. This is where the attacker insinuates that the link will go to a specific site by saying that in the display text, but the link actually goes somewhere else. So they kind of trick you. And here are some of the different scenarios or stories that attackers will use in an email, and I'm sure you're all going to be able to identify with them, because we've all seen them, from you win a free iPod, iPad, your PC has a virus, click here, to this overdue bill must be paid, or update your information with your bank because your bank was extremely incompetent and they lost it. But my absolute favorite one is when you receive an email from your long lost cousin from Brazil or Zimbabwe who recently passed away, and from some odd reason they decided to sign you up to inherit all of their riches. And the only thing that you need to provide is your bank account so they can deposit the money in there. I mean, what can I say? That's some pretty amazing stuff, right? Moving on to phishing. These are using the same tactics as email phishing, but it's performed on the phone, of course, voice phishing. I'm sure everyone attending this webinar at some point in time has received a phishing call. Actually, I bet majority of the people in this webinar have at least received one a day. These phishing campaigns are getting really smart because they're starting to incorporate caller ID spoofing, so the area code and the number are recognizable to trick you into answering the phone. And for the first time last week, I was sitting at my desk typing up a report. I looked down on my phone, it was vibrating. My wife's contact picture showed up and her number popped up. I was like, oh my. So I picked my phone up, I answered it, and lo and behold, it was someone from Microsoft that just wanted to log into my PC and fix it because it was infected with viruses. I know it's frustrating because the tactics are getting more advanced and personal, but we just have to beware. And since we just talked about cell phones, we'll talk about smishing, which is, once again, that fun word that I like to say. This uses the same tactics mentioned above, but is delivered through SMS messages or text messaging on your cell phones. The good thing for the bad actors on this is pretty much everyone has a cell phone, so it can be really effective in mass. The most common message that I've seen come through contains random links that'll lead you down a path of like areas that you just don't want to go, the dark web. Next is a different type of social engineering called pretexting. This uses fabricated scenarios to gain the trust of the victim with the goal of extracting their personal information. And the way this differs from phishing is that pretexting often tends to be a more personal and continuous dialogue with someone to gain their personal information so that they can impersonate you to manipulate others, such as coworkers, organizations, and even your financial institutions. So let me give you a little example so that you can understand a little bit better. So I give you a call. My name is Kevin Ivey. I'm your account representative with Cox or Comcast Internet. I'm calling just to ask a few simple questions, non-personal questions about your satisfaction with your internet connection at the office. After the easy phone call, a level of trust has been built, and to increase that trust, I'll even go one step further and I'll send a follow-up thank you email to the individual, just so we're getting really personal. So I have them baited. The next time I call, I'll explain to them that, hey, we've ran new internet lines in your area, and there's this new super fast gigabit internet connection at no charge. We're looking for some early adopters to adopt this internet. There's no additional equipment needed. The router already has the capabilities built in. The computers are ready to go. The only information that I need is to verify some account questions with a few questions. This is the point where I can ask questions such as the last 4 digits of the credit card number, maybe the last 4 digits of social security number, birthday, mother's maiden name, anything like that. But the point is that I built some type of trust with the victim, and by asking these questions that are sort of sensitive, but I'm not requiring them to provide all the details, I can then use that information, which I'm sure we can all identify with, to impersonate them on other websites, because often when you're trying to forget your password or anything like that with a website, they ask questions such as mother's maiden name, like I mentioned, the last 4 digits of this, last 4 digits of that. So that's the point of that particular attack. Social engineering has gotten really advanced. So let's move on to the next and the last type of social engineering, which is the physical one. The motive and end goal with the physical side of social engineering is the same as phishing, but this time it's in your face and it's really personal. In some cases, the individual may use props such as fake ID badges, printed polo shirts, and specialized gear just to kind of support the persona that they're impersonating. Because we all know that if something looks official, you're more than likely going to let them in. A pretty common tactic used in physical social engineering is name dropping. A lot of times we think that, man, that guy's legit or he's valid if he starts dropping names of personnel at the organization. But with modern technologies and sites like LinkedIn, we know how easy it can be to determine who is who at an organization. The most common technique is posing as a vendor for an appointment. So basically, someone comes in, they're posing as pest control worker with some fabricated swag. The next one is posing as internal staff. Just walk into the facility nonchalantly, don't even look at the front desk, act like you own the place, and sometimes that's seen as a sign of, hey, that person works here, and it's successful. The last one is tailgating. I know we're not talking about sitting on the back of a Ford, drinking a couple of beers, listening to some Tim McGraw. This is the tailgating where we monitor a facility for an employee-only entrance or exit, and then we wait for an employee to get ready, coming back from a smoke break or lunch, and they open the door and walk in, and then you're just like, oh, excuse me, let me get in right behind you, and they're like, oh, this is just another employee. And typically they'll let you in that way. And then we have the really thought out attacks, which include every single type, and this is what I call the smorgasbord of social engineering. That's a really funny word. So, for example, the bad actor may spoof another employee's email address by buying a domain, like we mentioned earlier. That's similar to the target address, but there's a subtle change. So let's pick on thebestbank.com. So I purchase thebestbank.com, but I have an additional T in the name. So once I have that domain and I look around on LinkedIn, I set up an email address, which we'll just call Deborah@mybestbank.com. They can send an email to a branch manager or many branch managers, which, like I said, can be identified using LinkedIn or any other resource. And I'm going to let them know that, hey, Kevin Ivey with Roadkill Pest Control is going to be at your location Monday morning, 8 a.m. for some routine pest control spray. Now we can see the situation sounds extremely convincing, and it is, but it gets better, I guess you could say, because that bad actor can then wait till later in the day, give that particular branch manager a phone call, and once they're on the phone, they can say, hey, I'm Kevin Ivey with Roadkill Pest Control. I'm trying to verify my appointment that's been set. The next step in this engagement is to show up Monday at 8 a.m. with a nice fancy printed badge, a spray canister full of water, and a vinyl printed polo shirt, and the chances are extremely high that this individual, having gone through each of these curated steps, will be able to gain access to the areas that they've been targeting. I mean, it's that easy, and all this can happen in a matter of days and even a matter of hours if they're trying to escalate things really quickly. So I've talked a good bit. Let's stop here for some little off-topic trivia. I was trying to think of a really good question with some people here at Trace the other day, and we figured since this was really popular, we'd use something from it. So instructions: the first person to respond in the Zoom chat window with the correct answer gets a $10 Starbucks gift card, which can probably only buy you 1 cup of coffee these days, but you know, it's free. Ready? Okay, so social engineers attempt to break down physical barriers just like dragons try to burn down walls. With that said, what are the names of the 3 dragons from the Game of Thrones series? The spelling does not have to be perfect.
All correct. We have a winner.
We have a winner. Who is the winner?
We have Kara Still from
Danny S.
Danny S.
We think the winner's Danny S. We'll have to filter through the chat log just to double check.
Danny S.
Danny S.
Awesome. All right, so I'll give you guys the correct answer, and I'm probably going to butcher them because I'm not really too good at this. But the first dragon is Rhaegal, the second one is Viserion, and the last one is Drogon. I think Drogon's pretty easy since you can just swap the A for O. All right, moving forward. So we've gone over all the ins and outs of social engineering, but we haven't discussed any type of tips on identifying that you're being attacked or any of the preventative measures that can be taken. So here we are. Let's start off with some tips on physical social engineering. One of the best things that you can do and should be doing with all visitors is requiring them to present their business card and a valid government-issued ID. Oftentimes, the engineer will use a fake name and fake props, and requiring them to show their driver's license can halt the attack immediately. Next up, pay close attention to the person and their story, because when people are lying, they tend to make really small mistakes, such as not being sure who placed the work order, who sent them, and just generally being unfamiliar with the area that they're in. Another thing is name dropping. We mentioned this earlier. It's used to make them sound more convincing so they can persuade you. Like, you know, hey, I've worked with Kevin, the CEO of the company, or the VP of sales before, so they know me, so everything's good, right? Well, no, it's not. Another good thing to look for is nervousness or rushing. Since the person's lying, we know that they're going to probably be jittery or fumble over words, just generally not comfortable. And then others can actually be the opposite. They can be extremely calm, forceful, overly aggressive, and using lines such as, well, if I can't complete this inspection, then your boss is going to be really mad at you because you paid for me to come all the way out here for blah, 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 blah. We mentioned that social engineers like to use props to seem official. So inspect their bags or props, because these can sometimes give away that person. Like if an exterminator is standing in front of you and he has an empty spray canister. chances are that that guy is not there to get rid of any type of mosquitoes or pests, whatever exterminators do. With all the talk about props, badges, and social engineering, it was only fitting that I showed you this next slide. Yeah, there it goes. So this is official. Jokes aside, this is an actual insurance inspector badge that I created for a few on-site social engineering engagements that I did last year. As you can see here, with a little time and effort, and minus the little eye badge, the disguises and props can be extremely convincing, and they're almost indistinguishable from the real ones. So moving on. Let's go over some email phishing tips. Of course, the easiest tip is to never trust suspicious emails, but we know that sometimes all phishing emails may not be suspicious immediately. Some things that we can look for are spelling and grammar issues across the board. So if a lot of the words are misspelled in the sentences just don't look right, throw your red flag up. There's any attachment that seems suspicious, such as receiving an invoice or a PDF from someone that you've never heard of, or even someone that you don't suspect would send you something like that, throw your flag up. And if all else fails and something just does not seem right, pick up the phone and call that person that is emailing you. I mean, that's one of the best things that you can do. And then, of course, last but not least, and depending on your environment, report these suspicious emails to your internal IT staff or third-party IT vendor or your systems administrator so that they can know what you guys are being attacked with, and then they may be able to put some policies or solutions in place that can actually help you out. And then since we're talking about phishing emails, why don't we look at a real one here? What you can see here is that I received an email from another employee at Trace Security telling me about our updated holiday schedule for the year, which we all love holiday schedules because that means we do not have to come to work. Everything looks normal and nothing stands out immediately, but let's dig around a little bit so I can show you a few things. And then spoiler alert, I created this fake email account and crafted the email to myself so I can demonstrate this for you. All right, let's start from the top and move all the way down. Looking at the email address, we can notice that a subtle difference in the domain name. Our domain here at Trace is tracesecurity.com with one T, but apparently this one has two T's. Next, we have the link that is supposed to bring you to our holiday schedule, but upon hovering over that link, we can see that it actually brings you to yahoo.com, and no one goes there. So then in the signature, you have the contact information. This information is not correct. I checked another email from that coworker, and none of it adds up. Last, and similar to the link above, and this is a part of the link manipulation, the email hyperlink at the bottom actually goes to youhavebeenhacked@gmail.com. So if I were to click that, that's who I would be emailing. Those are some of the things that you should be checking for, especially if something seems off in the email, or if it requires you to do an action other than just reading, which is what email should be doing. Moving on to phishing, voice phishing. The easiest tip is to be suspicious of all unknown callers. Ask questions to verify their identity. Be vocal. Be a detective. Phone numbers can easily be spoofed these days, as I mentioned earlier, so don't rely on the caller ID to be the end-all for verification, because like I provided an example earlier, I looked at my phone and it showed my wife's name and her contact photo. When I picked it up, it was this dude from Microsoft trying to get into my computer. So if after asking questions you're still kind of feeling suspicious, tell the caller that, hey, look, I want to end this phone call now. I want to give you a call back on the same number just so I can verify your identity. Chances are if they did spoof the number and you call back, you're not going to get the same person. Now to smishing tips. Like others, always be suspicious of weird-looking numbers. Absolutely do not click links from numbers that are not in your address book without researching them first. And for the most part, from doing a little bit of research, aka Googling, many of the companies that do business, especially financial services, that do not conduct business via messaging. So that they're not going to, Chase is not going to text you and say, hey, click this link, I want to update your billing information, or hey, click this link, a check has been deposited in your account. And I said for the most part. So now let's go over some preventative measures that we can take. First, there's regular security awareness training. This is an extremely valuable element in the prevention of these types of attacks, as you're basically educating your staff. There are many vendors out there that provide this type of service or solution, including trace security, but for the sake of social engineering alone, you want to make sure that whoever you go with, that there is content that includes specifically social engineering, just so you can promote the better awareness and reduce the chance that employees fail from different types of social engineering. As with security awareness training, all employees should be attending these on a regular basis, including new hires and even higher up upper management, because oftentimes they get targeted more than others. And then there's phishing and vishing campaigns. This is where you contract a third-party vendor to test your employees, like Trace Security. Different phone and email campaigns can be crafted to test employees in a number of different ways. Some products, including ours, allows you to enroll employees in that fail from any of these tests into specific content training so you can increase their knowledge where they're lacking. And depending upon your budget, you can either test a sample of employees on a regular basis, or you can just do the entire workforce out the gate. But regardless, with the amount of phishing attacks these days, I recommend that you at least do something. Next, there's on-site social engineering, which is where you will contract a vendor to come in as a bad actor and try to gain access to information or areas of your facility. This is exactly what we described earlier in some of the examples, where a person will pose as some recognizable vendor and try to pivot around in your facility, which is going to test your employees' adherence to the visitor access and escort policies. And then last, there are anti-phishing solutions that perform different automated checks when an email comes through and will flag anything that it deems suspicious or out of the normal. Some of these solutions will block the email entirely, while others may just notify you within the email about what it found. We broke down that email, the spoofed email earlier from Jason to myself. We broke that down and we enabled our pinpoint solution. So let's hop to the next slide so I can show you what it actually found. All right, as you can see here, our in-house solution, Pinpoint, does various checks in an email, such as recognizing that the sender is sending from a different email address than usual, and also identifies that a domain name is similar to Trace Security was used. And then last, you'll notice that it also caught the link manipulation, which the link states that it's tracesecurity.com, but actually goes to yahoo.com. This is what these email proofing or anti-phishing solutions look like. And while they're not perfect and nothing is perfect, they add another level of security for those of us that don't always check every single thing in an email and actually want to keep working efficiently. That is the content I had today, but before we jump off into questions, I had one more trivia, but this time it's going to be a little more challenging. And since it'll be more challenging, the reward is going to be a little bit better than a few cups of some go-go juice in the morning. We're going to be giving away a one-time 10 email address phishing campaign package to the first person that can answer this correctly in the Zoom chat window. Who can name the 3 types of social engineering that we went over today? Okay, it looks like Jamie G got the question correct. The correct answer was phishing, pretexting, and physical. So after the webinar, Jamie, as well as the other individual that won the trivia in the middle of the webinar, we'll reach out to you and make sure that you get what we promised. All right, so let's open up to questions. Yeah, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. If you don't want to have your question answered in front of everyone, feel free to also reach out to me. My email address is kevin.i@tracesecurity.com. Or you can also connect with me on LinkedIn, like I mentioned.
Can you explain the difference between phishing and whaling?
So can I explain the difference between spearfishing and whaling? So yeah, so spearfishing, it is what it says it is. They're just shooting at everyone. They're just targeting everyone that they can. The whaling is different in that they will only target the top level individuals at your organization. So if I'm targeting your organization, I'm going to get on LinkedIn and I'm going to go to your organization. I'm going to hit all employees and I'm going to look for the CEOs, CFOs, COOs, and then I'm going to target them with phishing campaigns. And it could be, like we mentioned earlier, it could be email, phone, anything at that point. But yeah, you're basically changing your target from everyone and just throwing a whole bunch of junk out there to just targeting those top individuals at an organization. Which is why the name is whaling. We do know that whales are much larger than the rest of the fish in the ocean. Let's see if we have another questions pulled up. All right, folks. Well, I guess that is about it. We didn't get any other questions that came through. I hope everyone gained some valuable knowledge about this.
Are there any apps programs to prevent smishing?
To prevent smishing, not that I know of. I do know that some of the cell phones these days, like the Google Android phones, I have one of those. It will let you know that, hey, this is spam. They've also moved a little bit further. Sometimes I'll get phone calls, like I got 2 phone calls earlier, back to back, letting me know that I'm getting a political spam call. So I guess Google is starting to jump on the wagon where they're identifying what's what, and they're trying to notify you up front. But as far as any automated solution, I know iOS doesn't allow you to integrate with any of their system apps, so it's probably not going to be possible with iOS. But if there is a solution on Android, I can find out, and I will go through that chat window, get your contact information, and reach out to you.
Is it a good idea to make sure you have no company emails on your website?
That is actually a really great idea. While it's really beneficial to have contact information on a website, I personally had my contact information on a website, I guess about a year ago, a company website, and then immediately I started getting crazy amounts of phone calls, emails, and I just couldn't figure out what was going on. And then I was like, oh, I'm on the company website. So to kind of trick them, I went into the company website and I would swap a letter or a number out with something that looked really similar so that the reader can actually still identify how to contact us. But these automatic scraping mechanisms couldn't grab it and contact me. So.
One more. So someone recommended getting rid of your phone to prevent smishing, and Joe asked how is he going to play games?
Well, Joe, I mean, I guess you can go ahead and get rid of your phone if you'd like. We can always send it back, go back to pagers in the old days, chain pagers. I'll just shoot you a page and you call me from a payphone. That's probably the safest bet, but then you deal with a bunch of germs on the payphone, so you're always dealing with something. Thanks for that question, Joe. All right, folks, well, we're good here. We're going to end this webinar. For those of you that are interested in the slide deck or any of the content, as well as the recording of this, we will push this out on all of our social media platforms not too long after this. If you want to connect with me, ask any questions, feel free to email me or look me up on LinkedIn. All right, have a good weekend.